I felt like a Disney princess, sort of. There wasn't a prince involved, there wasn't any lovely satin frocks, there wasn't any dragons being slayed. There was a frock, that's kind of an important feature of the incident. Anyway, I felt like I had done something amazing, and what I'd done was lock myself to a bulldozer. So for a very long time I've been concerned about the world that we all inhabit, that I think it's quite sick, and I've been trying to find ways to do my bit to make it better. So I work in environmental management, in waste and in water, and I have been a Greens candidate. I was very involved in the North Queensland Conservation Council, and I've been to countless rallies and marches and given various speeches and stuff. And the world still needs fixing, yeah? Hasn't made much difference. So I got involved in the Stop Adani campaign. I'm sure you're all from Townsville. You've probably heard quite a lot about the Adani mine, which is being planned for the Galilee Basin down a long way west of Collinsville, past Claremont, well, down that general direction, past the Ballyando crossing. And there's a big concern that this is meant to be a really huge mine with a lot of coal that, if burnt, will significantly increase our greenhouse gas emissions and the climate catastrophe we are currently in. So I felt the need to get involved. There'd been a lot of actions by the Stop Adani movement, mostly focused on the port. Adani had bought the port at Abbott Point at Bowen, and so there had been a lot of activity, actions by the Stop Adani community to stop work at that port. But a few years ago, they were finally starting work on the mine and the associated rail line, and there was going to be a big event, a ribbon cutting event with premiers and the like to open the construction. And whenever there's a big event in the Adani calendar, there's a equally big event in the Stop Adani calendar. So there was a call put out to people to come and be part of some actions. It was going to be quite a big event. And so I've come from Townsville. I'm much closer than a lot of people who have travelled by train and car and sometimes plane up from wherever they live. And so I've got down probably a little earlier, a few days earlier than maybe other people before the actual official day of arriving. And I got to this camp. It's a place, there's a Stop Adani camp that they have had for several years that was paid for by some donors, wealthy donors who have bought this property down near Collinsville where they have their base. And it's a kind of commune in the sense that people live there in their tents mostly, or their camper vans, and stay there for a reasonable period of time. Everyone chips in to look after the chickens or the garden or build the dunny, and cook usually vegan food and wash up. One of the times I've been there, John Butler was actually washed up my dishes, so that's my little claim to fame. So it's quite a lovely communal experience, and quite a diverse range of people that participate. Some might be labourers or students or retired teachers and nurses, but of course there's also that group of people who you might call professional activists that have committed their life to doing work like this. And so sometimes they might dress accordingly and look like feral hippies, but I was quite amazed that they are in fact quite skilled and capable professionals in this space. So the day I arrived, there was maybe 30 people at the camp, and they talked us through what it might be like to be part of this kind of action. And they talked about the bunny, and the bunny is the person who's in the arrestable position. And they talked about the laws and what it might mean if you got arrested, and what difference it would make, which a lot of it's about just media exposure, as well as stopping works on the mine and the railway line. So at that time, I had just been made redundant from Townsville City Council, so I wasn't doing much. I didn't have much to lose. And I was also had a little bee in my bonnet because at the same time, Townsville City Council were planning on buying Adani an airstrip. And I didn't think it was a real fair deal. If we sack Gail, we can build Adani an airstrip. So I was bothered, and that was one of my motivations for really wanting to get involved. So the process in these places involves a lot of consensus. Those of you who've participated in this, I know you have, it's a lot of talking for a long period of time. But we sat around the evening and talked about what it might look like, and we agreed that 3 of us would be bunnies, and we agreed what the action would be. And once that had happened, everyone got up and just started doing things, and it just seemed to be an amazing, hive of activity of people who just was organised, knew what they were doing, seemed to be professional. There were people, artists making banners. There was people who were welding the lock-on device together, which is 2 tubes of heavy metal that are welded together at a 90 degrees with a bar in between. And I had some wire around my wrist with a little dog clip on each hand. So I could put my hand in this elbow and clip on to the bar, and people can't release me. I can release myself if I needed to, because I can just hook out, but for anyone to release me, they have to get an angle grinder to get me out of there. So that was what we were using. There were other people who were out, filling up cars with petrol, other people preparing food and snacks and getting other equipment together. And this was all happening in a fairly short period of time because, the conversation started at 6 o'clock at night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning we are driving to the Adani site, which is a couple of hours from where we were, a bit east of Collinsville. And so we get there just as the sun comes up. There's lots of big macho-looking diggers there that we've gone, oh, that's excellent. We're going to lock ourselves to the big macho digger. And so we did that, the 3 of us, each on a different one. And I've got my elbow thing locked onto the digger. There's big signs. There's people all on the social media duty taking photos, and we're doing interviews, and I'm saying why I'm there, and it's all over Facebook, all over Twitter and stuff. But nobody came. Nobody came to use those big diggers that day. It was all a bit sad. It's like, we were there planning on being there just before the workers arrived. We were there like sometime after 5, and we were expecting workers would come at 6 or whatever. Didn't come at 6 and didn't come at 7, and then maybe getting closer to 8. And we're like, this just kind of feels a bit pointless. But just over there, on the other side of the railway line, because it was a railway line that we were, the construction of, the railway line from the mine to the port that we were blockading. On the other side of the proposed railway line, there was a little bobcat doing bobcatty type things. And so we went over there and we talked to them, and they were part of the construction. I don't really know what they were doing, but there was maybe a dozen workers there. So the bobcat driver got out and had a chat to one of my colleagues, and I've taken the opportunity to lock onto the bobcat. It's like this high. All the photos on social media, if you go looking, are me locked onto the bulldozer. Just so you know. And the bobcatty group of people didn't seem to care. They thought it was probably a good opportunity for Smoko. So they've sat down and had a cup of tea, and we chatted and stuff. In the meantime, by then, the Adani had been notified of this action, and my colleagues are still locked on to the bulldozers on the other side, which, as it turns out, are on Adani-owned property. And so someone had come down from Townsville, one of the head of construction from Townsville, all very angry and red-faced that we had the audacity to, blockade his construction. And he had asked my colleagues to move on. And they said, no, thank you. No, we won't. We'll stay here. And not long after, the police have arrived, and they've come from Claremont, and they have said to my colleagues, you're trespassing, you've been asked to leave, will you leave? And they've said no. So they've been put under arrest at about 9 o'clock in the morning. And so they stayed there, and the police had to then send someone down from, I think, Townsville to unlock them, which took quite a long period of time. But as it turns out, where I was locked onto the little bobcat was not Adani land, and the workers who did have some authority didn't ask me to move. They didn't seem to care. They didn't tell me I was trespassing or give me a formal notice, so the police couldn't do anything. Mr. Adani was very angry about that because he really thought the police should get me to move on, but the police couldn't because I was not officially trespassing if I'd not been asked to leave. Eventually, at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they've got hold of the property owner who's they've given me the phone with the property owner who's given me a verbal, will you leave? And as it happens, by then the workers had gone. They'd been gone for like an hour, and I thought, well, yeah, you know what, I will, because we've done what we came to do. All the workers have, a dozen workers have stood down, gone home, works have stopped. And so I took the opportunity to say, yes, I'm unlocked. I'd been there, since 5, and by then it was well after 1. Police officer offered to drive us back out to where the rest of my crew were. It was just at the time me and my support worker who was feeding me, because I'm locked on. I think I would have had a camelback, and he was just feeding me. It was kind of fun. But the police have driven us back out because it was a fairly long walk, might have been a couple of k's. But he took my lock-on device and he said, I need to put that in the back of the paddy wagon rather than the front because it's a dangerous weapon, which was actually just a ploy to keep my device because he didn't know how it worked and he wanted to, investigate it, give it some, forensic overview. And so I lost my lock-on device, which was a pity because, it's a fairly significant piece of kit. So I've gone there, we've done my bit. We waited for several hours for my colleagues to be cut out, and then, we've had more conversations with the police. They've gone to Claremont, and the rest of us have gone back to the camp. And unbeknownst to me, there was a lot of people coming that day to the camp, including a lot of high-profile people in the environment movement. There was the head of Australian Conservation Foundation. There was someone quite senior in Friends of the Earth. There was a off-duty senator. And I knew all these people from my work with the Conservation Council, and there were a lot of other people there. And so when we arrived back from this quite a big day, I've turned up at the camp to basically a party going on, and I was the queen of the party. They were having the party in my honour as the bunny who didn't actually get arrested. And so it felt like they'd almost, carried me in on a litter, and, I was hailed as, the hero of the day. And, as it turned out, I didn't do anything other than sit there. There was, 30 people who put this whole thing together. But for the whole time I felt supported. I felt that these people knew what they were doing. I felt it was a safe activity. And I just felt it was a really important way to do my bit to try and, stop this climate catastrophe. And the mine has not yet been stopped. It's been curtailed a lot, and it's getting smaller and smaller. And there's insurers are pulling out, and financiers are pulling out, and there's a lot of concerns whether or not they will actually ever. It's unlikely they'll ever dig out significant amount of coal. And so I feel grateful that I've been part of that really big moment in Australia's history to stop Adani.